What is going on, Pretender here, back with another Honkai style guide, and today I'm here with a video regarding Phainon. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you, the viewer, a lot of insight and stuff to consider whether actually pulling for Phainon or not, including some general info on Phainon himself, then stuff like reruns to consider because there are some pretty beefy reruns that we are close to that you do definitely want to consider when using your Jades on. I'll also be talking about why Phainon is good, but also some glaring issues he does have, as he does actually have quite a few issues that are worth talking about. Levels of investment on him, so you know whether it is good to go for his light cone, getting a dupe, and why his dupes are really good, why his light cone is really good, and so on. And also talking about things to consider such as future teammates and such that may fix his issues that will also be addressed. And then at the end of all of it, talking about if Phainon would be worth it for you by giving you some scenarios to consider. That's all I wanted to say. Before I get into the video, if you do find this video helpful in any way, shape, or form, dropping a like would be very appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all other types of style content and guides. Be sure to check out the description to join the new Discord server as well, and let's get straight into the video. So this video does assume you, the viewer, already knows what Phainon does, and this section is not going to be going over exactly what his kit is. I will just be briefly covering it just because, you know, it obviously could change a little bit as he is not officially in game, so it's not confirmed. But generally assuming you, the viewer, does know what he does, and obviously highlighting the fact that the only confirmed details are he is a destruction path character and also physical. But from what we do know, it seems like Phainon is going to be a actual crit DPS. He is going to have access to multiple things such as a counter, he's going to have a unique transformation, he's going to have access to a actual AoE bounce enhanced skill, he's going to have an enhanced basic attack, he's also going to have a unique ultimate, so similar to Acheron, Feixiao, similar to Castrus, and so on. Obviously the way he gets it is going to function differently. So not like how Acheron gets it based off having debuffs applied to enemies, not how Feixiao gets it where anyone is attacking. The way that Phainon actually does get charges for his ultimate is going to be by being the target of an ally's ability. So for example, Sunday skill, Sparkle skill, Brony skill, Tingin skill, and so on. And once you do have 12, you are able to unleash the ultimate state, where you do gain the enhanced versions of skill, basic attack, and counter that I did talk about previously. And he gains a bunch of access to multiple extra turns that do scale off his base speed. And at the very end, he is able to actually exit that state, and he also will dispel his domain. His domain also works uniquely, where no one on your field will actually be there. Once you do ult and put up that domain with Phainon, or I guess in this game it's called territory, my bad. But within the territory, your teammates will be off the field, so they are not actually able to act or anything. And all the turns and the spotlight will be directed to Phainon. Enemies can only attack Phainon. Phainon's the only one that can attack until the end where he does dispel it. And that dispel also is an attack itself. Phainon's base kit is also very saturated with buffs. He's able to provide a bunch of attack percent. He's also able to provide crit damage, which will be an important thing to discuss at a later part of this video. But that is some general ideas and general function that you want to know so far about Phainon. But now, talking about the actual rerun portion of this video, so reruns you do want to consider. We do know now the actual earliest someone has rerun is 3 patches after release, which means there are very strong characters that have yet to rerun and probably will be rerunning soon. The primary two are Sunday and Tribby. These two are going to be highly sought after characters, especially if you already have them and you go for the E1 on Tribby especially. The light cone on Sunday and also his E1, any form of investment on them is going to be very high sought because they are significant jumps. E1 on Sunday providing defense ignore, especially for memo spreads, is insanely strong. His light cone making him skill point positive is super broken, and Tribby has the best E1 in the game. Tribby's light cone is also strong, but that's not going to be a main consideration as most people do use DDD. But considering both these characters are going to be highly sought if you do not already own them, that's going to be a big priority as they do benefit quite literally every single account in some way, shape, or form. And both their E1s, especially Tribby's, are insanely broken to justify their value. Less so on Sunday because you can definitely function without it, but with Sunday that's counteracted by his light cone, and a lot of people will definitely want that light cone. So those are two very high sought characters that will be considered. 3.4 also does enable the fact that Mayday would be one to rerun as well. Very strong character even without the buffs favoring him, and especially with having a super broken E1 that actually makes him just good in every single mode is another thing that might potentially be sorted out after. Not as much as supports obviously, but still is going to be a popular character that is definitely going to get some summons. And this is just assuming the characters that have yet to actually rerun. If you combine it with the fact that they can throw some other characters that have very high actual values of pulling that could rerun definitely soon, like Robin, Linksha, and so on, Past that actual first within 3 updates, the reruns become very unpredictable. They can very much throw out a very highly sought after character that has already reran, so again, like the ones I mentioned, Feixiao, so on. But mainly focusing on the fact that Sunday and Chibi are the big focuses. Mayday would be the second one up because it's also pretty close to the time that he could rerun, as it's going to be 3 patches and Chibi would rerun, so that would also mean 3 patches for him because he released in the same patch. And then if we do skip past 3.4, 3.5 would probably mean that Castrus and Anoxa, who are going to be very much valued units, they would also rerun, but I'm not going to really talk about that too much as that's in the future. Last thing I want to talk about is also the fact that the Fate collab is releasing with Phainon. A few weeks later, it will be the Fate collab, so a lot of people are going to summon for Saber, Saber's Lycon, Dupes on her, then also Archer is free, but you'll still want to get his Lycon, E1, E2, and so on. So that's even more things to consider, especially because Saber is also really strong and Archer is also really strong. Both have strong E1s, both have strong Lycons, that's going to be more considerations. But now moving back to Phainon specifically himself, talking about why he's strong and also some weaknesses he does have. Phainon does have a lot of ways to work. He does function pretty well in modes of like MLC and Pure Fiction and such. He does have very good damage output. When you do especially have his enhanced skill, it does good damage. He is also relatively simple to use, especially once you are in his ultimate, as you really don't have to focus on anything else like other alt timings because he is the only one on the field. Only things you're going to want to know is when to actually use your meteor, when to actually use the stack buildups, and when to use the counter and such. Very good DPS output while also being relatively easy to use. His main source of damage being his enhanced skill with the big meteor once you do consume 4 stacks is also going to be fully AoE. It is bounced, so that's a bit iffy, but it is still fully AoE. Especially in a game where we do, favor AoE, that's going to help him compete there. And since it is bounce, it can be a bit of an issue when there are actually 5 enemies because you know how the bounce multiplier goes. But that also does mean in single target scenarios, he is going to be extremely strong. Just take something like Anoxa's skill, for example. It hits a lot and it's also bounce. On a full AoE thing where the damage is spread out, it still can be good. But if you really have all those bounce hits hit that one target, it shreds through their HP, and that does stay true for Phainon. His meteor bounce is going to only hit that 1 or maybe even 2 targets, and it's going to absolutely shred through their actual HP. And being able to carry on the actual buffs that you do get into his form, so you don't have to worry about rebuffing him too much in there with all the extra turns. That also makes him a bit more simple in that case, so you don't have to change around anything because you quite physically can't. So he does have some good stuff going for him. Unfortunately, on the actual other side, where he has a lot of issues at the same time. Him having that territory where no one else is actually able to do anything is a good thing for usage-wise, but it's also a bad thing because now any form of sub-DPS, such as Chibi follow-up attack and such, you can't really use that because they won't be on the field, so no one is going to be helping you with damage except Phainon himself. Trippy follow-up attacks can add up to overall a lot of damage, so losing out on that is going to be insane. If you're trying to also run a sub-DPS on the team, that kills the entire idea of having a sub-DPS on the team, just because they won't be using his ultimate, and Phainon obviously outside his ultimate, just like other characters that may go into something like that, is not going to be too good. His base kit also being saturated with attack percent and crit damage and such, while can be good, is also still a bit sad, especially because that does mean the more you do have of that, so the more attack percent you have, eventually you would hit diminishing returns. So with too much attack percent plus Ting Yun, you might hit some attack diminishing returns with the too much crit damage, and also actually having Sparkle and Bronya and Sunday, which are all really good with him. That's going to actually have diminishing returns as well. That's going to be another downside he does actually have for him. He is also missing the perfect teammate for him, meaning he does have good access, like again, these characters that will buff him, like he has 1.x characters that still buff him, which honestly, the fact that you kind of have to use 1.x characters to have a full effect on him is kind of sad, but they still do have buffs that do work on him overall. Problem is, he really doesn't have any character that, fixes glaring issues. Like, he doesn't have a Sunday for the Aglia. He doesn't have a Tribute/RMC level character for Castrus, like how the jump for them is big. A lot of his issues that he does have is not really solved by any of these characters. It's just kind of making him slightly stronger and then have him do his own thing. So another thing you would want to consider is that eventually there's going to be a character that will be good for him, and so you'll not only have to summon for him, you'll have to summon for a future character, which, is pretty common, but that is something you want to consider because maybe the character themselves is going to be good, but maybe the thing that really helps is going to be their Lycon, maybe an early dupe, we don't know. That is definitely something you do want to consider though. Another problem he has is if you are not able to kill, let's say, the MOC within his first ultimate, it is very slow to build his ultimate back up, and you're going to be wasting a bunch of cycles, and because you frequently run him as a sustainless character, if you aren't able to actually kill in that first ultimate and you exit it, you're going to be insanely susceptible from taking too much damage, especially in stuff like MOC 12 where enemies do hit hard. and you don't have a sustain, so you're not going to be healing any of it back. So in those best teams for him, where you don't really have a sustain, if you can't kill in that ultimate, you are going to be very, very susceptible to dying, which can end up ruining your entire run, obviously, because if you have one character go down, then it's kind of GG. These are like the biggest weaknesses you do want to consider, so if you don't really find a big issue within these actual reasons, then that's going to be good for you. There might be a lot of issues, but that does not mean he is not strong. He is still a really strong character. He just has these very big issues that do kind of stick out. But again, he's still going to be a character that is strong and can clear. Now, talking about investments for him like other characters, again, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, E1, E2, S1, and so on. So first, a team around him. As I already mentioned, he does not have a perfect teammate for him. So you're most likely going to be looking at a future character that you're definitely going to summon for, which may include getting the character themselves, getting their light cone, maybe even getting an early dupe, as maybe it does fix a decent portion of them in that new character's base kit, but maybe they have a light cone which fixes the biggest part, or maybe a early dupe. We don't know that for sure, but there will eventually be a character that does help with Phainon's issues. So getting the perfect character for him is going to be one to consider, and the fact that you may have to go for dupes or maybe even a light cone. But anyway, Phainon does have access to supports that do help him, especially with building his ultimate by being the actual target of them. So Sunday is a fantastic one, as both his skill and ultimate are targeted on that one character. Brona is also going to be really good with Phainon as well. And funny enough, even a old 4-star character like Ting Yun is actually going to be great, as she is able to target that one character. Unfortunately, her energy buff isn't used too much, but Phainon does have that extra thing where if you do give energy, you're able to get that one extra charge. So it's not completely wasted on someone like Acheron and Feixiao, where you don't get anything out of it. But the characters that do target the actual one ally you do want to buff is going to be your usual go-to. Sparkle also works in that sense very well. Tribby also does work on his team, but isn't the best because you mainly want to focus on characters, once again, that can target him, and Tribby does not do that. Tribby's buffs are good for him, but again, you still very much want to have the characters that can target him. So in a sense, it does allow you to actually dust off these older characters, but that obviously means he's using older characters with older type buffs, and so not really having full access to true damage and such if you're not running Tribby. And more modern buffs, the only form of more modern buffs that are well-rounded is going to be Sunday, and the rest, not so much. Especially since you usually run 2 characters that are buffing crit damage, that definitely becomes oversaturated, unfortunately, as well. So a bit of issues with that, and there's definitely a waiting on the actual perfect teammate he will get that will be a support for him. But again, now talking about more investment on Phainon himself when it comes to his light cone, his E1 and E2. So his light cone is actually extremely important because it does increase base speed by 12. The extra turns will not be getting affected by speed buffs except the actual base speed. So the fact his actual signature light cone increases his base speed is going to be good. He also gains access to defense ignore, which is going to increase his damage, especially if you're stacking other sources of defense ignore / defense shred on your team. And he also is able to get a big increase to his damage though. But again, the main focus is actually the base speed increase, as that is going to impact his extra turns. So the fact you are able to get an increase to your base speed is going to be super big, and is usually going to be a must-have on him. On the flip side, he also has an extremely good E1 that does fix a glaring issue he did have, and that's with how his extra turns do work, scaling out the base speed and having no way to really affect it, impacting his DPAV and such. His E1 is actually going to be able to increase the inheritance ratio of his extra turn speed for each enemy you do kill up to a certain amount, which increasing the speed of the actual extra turns means you can actually get them faster, and can definitely help with clearing quicker and also cycling in and out of ultimate even faster. And on top of that, when you do use your ultimate, you gain a crit damage buff, so that's also going to increase his overall damage. His E1 is going to be extremely sought after, as well as the extra turn that you do get, once again, is affected by nothing, only base speed, and also now the E1 extra speed increase. Those are the only 2 sources that are going to help it, and so it is a very powerful dupe just because of that reason. His E2 is also really good because it does provide him a physical res pen increase, but mainly for the fact that it does give him another extra turn when you do use 4 scored stacks, aka once you do consume the 4 to drop the meteor, giving you another turn, which is going to be, a whole other turn to help you build stacks, maybe use your stacks if you already have some built up. That combined with his actual E1, because obviously you'll have the E1 if you have the E2, especially together, is super good, and does increase his damage, and also fixes the big issue of his actual extra turns not really having any forms of speed increases besides base speed, thanks to the fact that E1 does increase the extra turn speed. And on top of that, now once you do use 4 of those things, you're able to actually gain an extra turn, which is going to skyrocket his damage and also give you more turns to clear quicker. So E1 S1 is going to be a very much wanted position, as you're getting the benefit from the base speed, and you're also getting the benefit of increasing his extra turn speed. And E2, while it isn't needed, it's going to be a big jump, but it is to be expected, especially with a DPS like this. That extra turn is going to go a very, very long way. And now finally talking about if Phainon is worth for you, the viewer. The main thing you do want to consider is if you are in need of a DPS. Obviously, if you're not in need of a DPS, then obviously there's not going to be really much of a case to pull for another DPS. So you definitely want to use your Jade smart, especially if you want to consider the fact that maybe you already have enough DPSs that are already working well. And let's say you have Tribi and you don't have E1 Tribi. You definitely want to save for something like E1 Tribi instead. Same thing with Sunday and Sunday Lycon, maybe even his E1, especially if you use someone like Aglia. There's infinite situations for every player that I cannot obviously get into all of them, otherwise this video would be probably 30 years long. But the general thing you want to consider is if you need a DPS, if no, because you actually just have enough DPSs and a proper team for each side. But you can definitely use some support Eidolons, such as Chibi E1 and such, and you want to save for that, then that's going to be something to consider. Now, if you answered the fact that you do need another DPS, or you just want Phainon because he is a DPS and you want to use him as your DPS, are you willing to get his Lycon? Are you willing to go for his E1? While you don't actually need them, E0S1, especially at a minimum, is going to function well. E0S0 is going to be a little bit rough, especially without that base speed. Not saying it's bad, it's still going to be good, but getting the actual base speed increase for the extra turns is going to be really good with this S1. And then E1 with the same reason, increasing his extra turn speed, allowing you to cycle and get more turns. Are you willing to invest to that point? If you're at least willing to get his Lycon, that is going to significantly increase his value. And then another thing to consider is, would you be willing to summon for the next best support for him? Because it is more likely that without the best support, he is going to, obviously drop off his position at the top relatively quickly with the way he works on the DPAV issues and such. While he is still definitely good with the way he does work, especially with, getting rid of everyone on the team, having a slow recharge all after the first one, and some other issues, it is more susceptible that he could be power crept with the way he does work quicker, but with the help of a best support for him that may actually assist in these issues, that is going to significantly impact the longevity he would have. So if you're willing to actually summon for the best character for him as well, that's going to make him a very strong pickup because you would be willing to actually get the character that will potentially fix his issues. So it's kind of like getting a 2 character and more of a long-term plan. If you have the summons and you get Phainon, maybe just E0S1, and then you get the character that maybe does increase, extra turn speed and such, or duplicate damage to the point where it helps. Just throwing out ideas out there, there's a lot of things that a new character could do to potentially help. Obviously, we don't know, but it's very safe to assume we're getting one. Would you be willing to actually go for that character? That is something you're definitely going to want to consider. But yeah, the main things you want to consider for this part is mainly considering getting him and his Lycon, if you're able to do that, and also be able to get the brand new character that's going to be best for him that may fix these issues. Then he's going to become a lot more worth it, as opposed to just being able to get him no Lycon or maybe no dupes either, while also not wanting to get his best support. Because then he's going to be extremely susceptible to not being able to perform up to par, especially with glaring issues that will not be fixed, as not having the new character won't fix them. And it would be much better that you just spend your resources elsewhere, Eidolons in existing characters, Lycons for existing characters, and so on. So if you do want the DPS, if you want to get him and you're able to at least get his Lycon, he's going to be very strong in that sense already. If you're able to get his E1, S1 at minimum, that's going to be insanely good. He's going to be super powerful. And then in the future, if you are willing to get his support, then fixing his issues is going to obviously make him last even longer, making him potentially one of the best characters in the game if they do actually address the issues. He may still be one of the best characters DPS-wise without that new character that's fixing his issues, but with it, it can solidify his position at the top very much longer, as right now he is competing with a lot when it comes to DPSs. So if you are willing to get him at least his Lycon or at least his E1 or maybe even both or higher, you're able to get that, and then you do end up getting support, you're able to do that, and you're willing to do it, then he's going to be a very good consideration to get, as you will cook in all fronts. And yet that practically is the end of the video, going over a lot of different things such as reruns to consider, general info on him, his strengths and weaknesses, and things to actually consider when it comes to his investment levels and what they do for him, and then giving you some scenarios on what you should consider, especially for deciding to actually pull for him. There's more things you can consider, but these are the main points that you definitely want to focus on. And obviously it changes from player to player, so I can't really give scenarios for quite literally every single player because every single player has a different account and will be in a different situation. But these I definitely do think are the main things you want to know. Anyway, once again, if you guys found the video helpful, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon for future videos like this along with all the types of Star Wars content and guides. Remember to join the Discord in the description below, and I'll see you later. Peace out.